Excuse me, you're in my seat. Move. 17-year-old Brittany Chen stood in the aisle of the airplane, her arms crossed and her lip curled in disgust as she stared down at the man sitting in 3A. He was young, maybe late 20s, wearing a simple blue jacket and jeans. His dark hair was cut short, and he was reading a book about aviation history. "I'm sorry, but this is my assigned seat. 3A. The man held up his boarding pass politely. Brittany snatched it from his hand and examined it like it was a forgery. "There must be a mistake. My father always books me in first class. I don't sit in economy with regular people. So, you need to move to wherever you're supposed to actually be sitting. This is first class. And this is my assigned seat." "First class? This?" Brittany gestured around the cabin with theatrical disgust. "This is barely better than economy. On international flights, first class has actual suites with doors. This is pathetic, and you—" She looked the man up and down. "Are clearly not first-class material. Did you use miles or something? Because real first-class passengers don't dress like they're going to Home Depot." The man's expression remained calm, though something flickered in his eyes. "I earned my seat, just like everyone else here. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to return to my book." "I don't think so." Brittany raised her voice, attracting attention from other passengers and a flight attendant. "I need someone from the airline to fix this." Situation: this person is in my seat, and I want him removed to coach where he belongs. What Brittany didn't know was that the regular person she was berating wasn't just any passenger. His name was Captain Michael Torres, and he was a decorated United States Air Force pilot who had just returned from a classified mission overseas. The simple blue jacket was actually a civilian cover for someone who regularly flew multi-million-dollar aircraft in some of the most dangerous airspace in the IAIO world. The flight attendant, a woman in her 40s named Sarah, approached with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" "Yes, this man is in my seat. I need him moved immediately. My father is a platinum member with this airline. We fly first class exclusively. I don't know how this person got up here, but it's clearly an error." Sarah checked both boarding passes. "Sir, may I see your ID?" Captain Torres pulled out his wallet and handed over his driver's license. Sarah's eyes widened slightly when she saw something else in his wallet, a military ID card with his rank and credentials clearly visible. She handed his documents back with notably more respect. "Everything is in order, sir. I apologize for the interruption." She turned to Brittany. "Ma'am, your assigned seat is 3C, not 3A. It's across the aisle." Brittany snatched her boarding pass from Sarah's hand and squinted at it. "Well, that's clearly a mistake. Switch us. I prefer the window." "I'm afraid I can't force another passenger to switch seats, ma'am. If you'd like to ask politely, that's between you and the other passenger." Brittany turned back to Captain Torres with an exaggerated sigh. "Fine. Switch seats with me. I want the window." "No, thank you. I'm comfortable where I am." "Seriously, don't be difficult. What difference does it make to someone like you? You're probably just flying somewhere boring anyway. I'm going to Aspen for a modeling shoot. This is important." Captain Torres marked his page and set his book down. "I'm going to Colorado Springs, also important, and I'm staying in this seat." "Colorado Springs? What's even in Colorado Springs?" Brittany laughed mockingly. "Let me guess, you're visiting family in some boring suburb? Or maybe you're going to hike because you can't afford actual entertainment." "Something like that." The dismissive response clearly irritated Brittany more than an argument would have. She wasn't used to being brushed off. "You know what? Whatever. I'll sit in this inferior seat, but I'm filing a complaint. People like you shouldn't even be in first class. You're bringing down the whole experience." She threw herself into seat 3C, making as much noise as possible with her designer carry-on. As she settled in, she pulled out her phone and began texting furiously, her thumbs flying across the screen. "Can you believe this?" she said loudly to no one in particular, clearly intending for Captain Torres to hear. "I have to sit next to some random guy in a basic jacket who probably saved up for years to afford this ticket. My father is going to hear about this." Captain Torres put in earbuds and returned to his book, seemingly unbothered. This infuriated Brittany even more. She was used to getting reactions, to people scrambling to please her, or at least engaging with her complaints. Throughout the boarding process, she made several more comments, each one louder than the last. "I bet he bought that book at an airport Hudson News. So typical. Is that jacket from Target? I can smell cheap fabric from here. Sarah, could I get a champagne? Oh wait, does he get champagne too? Or is there a dress code for the premium beverages?" Sarah brought 2 glasses of champagne, setting them down with practiced neutrality. As she walked away, Brittany stage whispered, "I'm definitely not drinking that. Who knows what kind of germs are floating around up here with the general public?" An older gentleman across the aisle, wearing a business suit, finally spoke up. "Young lady, your behavior is inappropriate. This man has been nothing but polite, and you've been harassing him since you boarded." Brittany turned her contempt on the new target. "Mind your business, Grandpa. This is between me and Captain Casual over here." "Actually, that's exactly what he is," the businessman said quietly. "Captain." Brittany laughed. "What, like a boat captain? Does he drive a ferry on weekends?" The businessman opened his mouth to respond, but Captain Torres touched his arm lightly and shook his head. "It's fine, sir. Really." The plane pushed back from the gate, and the flight attendants began their safety demonstration. Brittany scrolled through Instagram, her artificially enhanced lips pursed in concentration, completely ignoring the safety information. "Ma'am, you need to put your phone in airplane mode," Sarah reminded her. I know. God, it's like being in prison up here." Once they were airborne, and the seatbelt sign was turned off. Brittany immediately reclined her seat as far as it would go, then complained that it didn't go far enough. She ordered food she didn't eat, sent it back twice, and made disparaging comments about everything from the napkins to the temperature to the basic entertainment options. Captain Torres worked on his laptop, responding to what appeared to be official correspondence. At one point, Brittany leaned over deliberately to see his screen. "What are you working on? Let me guess, some boring spreadsheet for your boring job?" "Just some reports." "Reports about what? Sales figures? Inventory?" "Let me guess, you're in middle management somewhere, pushing papers and pretending you're important?" Captain Torres closed his laptop and looked at her directly for the first time since boarding. "Why does my profession matter to you?" The question caught Brittany off guard. "It doesn't. I'm just making conversation." "No, you're not. You're making judgments based on my appearance and trying to establish some kind of superiority. Why?" Brittany's perfectly made-up face flushed slightly. "I'm not doing that. I'm just saying you don't exactly look like you belong in first class." "And what does someone who belongs in first class look like?" "Like me. Designer clothes, expensive accessories, good skin, proper grooming. You look like you just rolled out of bed and threw on whatever was clean." "I see. So a person's worth and their right to occupy a space is determined by their clothing and grooming? In the real world? Yeah. Image is everything. My father taught me that. He's a very successful businessman. He knows how the world works. I'm sure he does." Captain Torres's tone was neutral, but something in his eyes suggested he was seeing right through her. "Tell me, Brittany, how do you know my name?" "I heard you on the phone earlier, telling someone about how you were being assaulted by poverty in first class. Hard to miss. Tell me, what do you do? You mentioned a modeling shoot." Brittany preened slightly, finally getting to talk about herself. "Yes, I'm a model. Well, an influencer mostly. I have over 200,000 followers on Instagram. Brands send me free products to post about. I'm basically famous. That's impressive. What do you post about? Fashion, beauty, lifestyle. You know, aspirational content. Showing people what success looks like. My feed is all about luxury travel. Designer clothes, exclusive events, things most people can't afford. And that's what you consider success? Things most people can't afford? Duh. If everyone could have it, it wouldn't be special. Captain Torres nodded slowly. Interesting philosophy. So value is determined by exclusivity and price? Exactly. Finally, someone gets it. Brittany seemed genuinely pleased, missing the subtle skepticism in his voice entirely. That's why I don't understand why airlines let just anyone into first class. It used to mean something. Now it's full of people using miles or getting lucky upgrades. It ruins the whole point. Which is? Being separate from regular people. Being recognized as someone important. Having privileges that others don't have. I see. And when you look at me, you see a regular person. Obviously, no offense, but yeah, you're just average. Basic job, basic clothes, basic life. I'm not trying to be mean, it's just reality. Some people are meant to be at the top and others are meant to be at the bottom. My dad says it's natural selection. The strong rise and the weak serve the strong. The businessman across the aisle was shaking his head in disbelief. A couple in the row behind them had stopped their conversation to listen. Even Sarah, passing by with drinks, paused slightly, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes sympathetic as they met Captain Torres's. Your father sounds like quite a character, Captain Torres said mildly. He's a genius, self-made millionaire, started with nothing and built an empire. He taught me that respect is earned through success, and success is measured in money and status. What about service? Does he teach you about service? Brittany wrinkled her nose. Service? Like waiters and stuff? God, no. That's for people who didn't apply themselves. My dad always says if you're smart enough and work hard enough, you don't have to serve anyone. You make people serve you. Interesting. So by that logic, soldiers, police officers, firefighters, teachers, they're all failures who didn't apply themselves. I mean, those are jobs for people who couldn't do better, right? Like, if you were really smart, you'd get a job that pays well. Nobody dreams of being a soldier or a teacher. Those are fallback careers. The businessman stood up abruptly, his face red. Young lady, I've heard enough. I'm a retired Marine Corps officer, and I can tell you that... Captain Torres raised his hand gently. Sir. Please, it's okay. She's young. She doesn't understand. I understand perfectly fine, Brittany snapped. You military people are so sensitive. It's not personal. It's just facts. My dad has friends in the military, and they all say the same thing. They wish they'd gone into business instead. The pay is terrible. The benefits aren't that great anymore, and you have to follow stupid rules all the time. Captain Torres's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the first crack in his cam facade. Your father's military friends say that? Yeah, they're jealous of his success. They admit they made the wrong choice. One of them is like a captain or something in the army. He told my dad he should have gone to business school instead. A captain in the army. Interesting. Captain Torres's voice was carefully controlled. What does your father do, exactly? Commercial real estate development. He builds shopping centers and office complexes. Makes millions. He just closed a deal for this huge project in... Brittany stopped mid-sentence as the pilot's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're currently cruising at 35,000 feet, and we expect to arrive in Colorado Springs about 15 minutes ahead of schedule. I want to give a special acknowledgement to a passenger on board today, Captain Michael Torres of the United States Air Force. Captain Torres is returning from a deployment where he flew combat missions protecting our service members overseas. Sir, on behalf of the crew and passengers, Thank you for your service." The cabin erupted in applause. Passengers turned in their seats, craning their necks to see. The businessman across the aisle stood and saluted. Several other passengers followed suit. Brittany's face went white, then red, then white again. She slowly turned to look at Captain Torres, who was accepting the recognition with obvious discomfort, nodding his thanks but clearly wishing the attention would end. You're an Air Force pilot?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes." "But you're so young, and you're wearing jeans, and you didn't say anything when you insulted me, my profession, and everyone who serves?" "No, I didn't say anything. I was raised to show respect even when I'm not shown respect in return. Part of that military training you think is for failures." Sarah appeared beside them, her professionalism slipping for just a moment as she smiled at Captain Torres. "Sir, we'd like to upgrade your drink service. What can I get you?" "I'm fine with water, thank you." "The captain also asked me to tell you that he's a retired Air Force pilot himself. He'd be honored to meet you after we land." "I'd like that. Thank you." After Sarah left, the cabin settled back into its normal rhythm, though several passengers were still stealing glances at Captain Torres. Brittany sat frozen, her phone forgotten in her lap, her carefully constructed confidence shattered. "I didn't know," she finally managed. "Would it have mattered if you did? If I'd been wearing my uniform instead of jeans? If you'd known my rank from the start?" Captain Torres turned to face her fully for the first time. "Let me ask you something, Brittany. Do you think the soldiers I fly missions to protect care what I'm wearing when I'm providing air support? Do you think the ground troops I cover care if my flight suit is designer? Do you think the enemy cares about my Instagram followers?" Brittany couldn't meet his eyes. "You judged me based on my clothes. You assumed I was nobody because I wasn't broadcasting my importance. You decided I didn't belong in first class because I don't look like what you think success should look like. But here's what you don't understand. Real strength, real achievement, real service. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need designer labels or social media validation." The businessman leaned across the aisle. "Captain, if you..." "Don't mind my asking. What aircraft do you fly?" "F-16 Fighting Falcon, multi-role fighter." "Beautiful aircraft, difficult to master." "It has its challenges, but it's an honor to fly it." Brittany's voice was shaky when she spoke. "What does a captain do in the Air Force?" Captain Torres studied her for a moment before answering. "A captain in the Air Force is an officer rank. It's not the highest rank, not by far, but it means I've been trusted with significant responsibility. I lead missions. I make life and death decisions. I'm responsible for multi-million-dollar equipment and the lives of my fellow service members. But you're so young." "I'm 28. I graduated from the Air Force Academy when I was 22. I've been flying combat missions for the past 4 years. Last month, I led a strike mission that took out enemy positions that were threatening a forward operating base. That mission saved American lives." The words hung in the air. Brittany felt tears pricking her eyes, but she couldn't tell if they were from shame or fear or something else. "The basic jacket you made fun of? I bought it because it's comfortable for long flights and doesn't draw attention. The book I was reading, it's about the history of air combat, written by a general I admire. The laptop I was working on? I was finishing reports on my last deployment and correspondence with the families of my squadron members." He paused, his voice taking on a harder edge. "The boring trip to Colorado Springs? I'm heading to Peterson Space Force Base for a classified briefing before my next deployment. The cheap fabric you could smell? That's probably the jet fuel that's permanently embedded in my clothes from spending the last 6 months in a combat zone." Brittany was openly crying now, her expensive mascara running down her carefully contoured cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I'm so sorry." "Here's what bothers me most, Brittany. You're not sorry because you were rude to a person. You're sorry because you were rude to someone with rank and status. If I really had been some regular guy flying to visit family, would your behavior have been acceptable? If I really was middle management with spreadsheets, would disrespecting me be okay? She shook her head, unable to speak. Your father taught you that respect is earned through success, measured by money and status. Let me teach you something different. Respect is given to every human being as a baseline, because they're human. What you did today, judging someone by their appearance, mocking their perceived status, treating them as less than, that's not strength. That's insecurity disguised as confidence. The retired Marine across the aisle nodded. Captain's right, young lady. I've met plenty of wealthy people in my life, and I've met plenty of poor people. Success in business doesn't make you a good person, and serving others doesn't make you a failure. Some of the finest people I've ever known were elementary school teachers making $30,000 a year. Some of the worst were executives making millions. Brittany wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup further. What can I do? How do I fix this? Captain Torres was quiet for a moment. You can't fix this. What's said is said, but you can learn from it. You can examine the values your father has taught you and decide if they're values worth keeping. You can start treating people with respect regardless of how they're dressed or what you perceive their status to be. You can recognize that service, whether it's military service, teaching, or any other form, is noble, not a fallback for failures. I feel terrible. Good. Feeling terrible means you have a conscience. What you do with that feeling is what matters. You can wallow in it and forget about it in a week, or you can let it change you. Sarah appeared again, this time addressing Brittany directly. Ma'am, I need to inform you that several passengers reported your behavior. Before we learned about Captain Torres's identity, the captain was asked if he wanted to file a complaint. He declined. However, the airline takes harassment seriously. You'll be contacted by customer service. Brittany nodded miserably. I understand. I deserve it. After Sarah left, Brittany turned to Captain Torres one more time. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why didn't you tell me who you were? When I first started being rude, you could have just said you were an Air Force captain. I would have shut up immediately. For the same reason, I didn't want the pilot to announce my presence on this flight. I don't do my job for recognition or special treatment. I do it because it needs to be done, and I'm capable of doing it. If I demanded respect based on my rank, what would that say about me? That I need external validation to feel worthy? He leaned back in his seat. Real confidence doesn't need to announce itself, Brittany. Real strength is quiet. Real achievement speaks. Through actions, not words or labels. You spend your life broadcasting your success, seeking validation through likes and followers and expensive things. But at the end of the day, what have you actually accomplished? What have you built, protected, or served? The question wasn't rhetorical, and Brittany knew it. She thought about her Instagram feed, the carefully curated photos of luxury and excess. She thought about the captions that humble bragged about exclusive experiences and designer purchases. She thought about how much time she spent crafting an image of success without ever examining what success actually meant. I haven't accomplished anything, she admitted. I just exist. Expensively. Then maybe it's time to change that. You're young. You have time to become someone who builds rather than just consumes, who serves rather than just takes, who adds value to the world rather than just displaying it on social media. The plane began its descent into Colorado Springs. Below, the mountains stretched out magnificently, indifferent to human constructs of status and worth. As they landed and taxied to the gate, Brittany gathered her things slowly. She wanted to say something more, to somehow convey the magnitude of what she was feeling, but words felt inadequate. Captain Torres stood, grabbing his small carry-on from the overhead bin. The businessman across the aisle stopped him. Captain, I served in Desert Storm. Just wanted to shake your hand. They shook, a moment of connection between veterans. Several other passengers came up as well, offering thanks or sharing their own military connections. Brittany waited until the small crowd dispersed, then stood. "Captain Torres!" He turned, his expression neutral, but not unkind. "I know I can't undo what I said, or how I acted. But I want you to know that I'm going to remember this flight for the rest of my life. I'm going to remember how you stayed calm and dignified when I was awful. I'm going to remember that you chose not to embarrass me even though you easily could have. And I'm going to try to be better. Not just try, I'm going to be better." Captain Torres studied her for a long moment. Then, for the first time since they'd met, he smiled slightly. "That's all anyone can do, Brittany. Make the choice to be better. Good luck with that." He walked off the plane, stopping briefly to chat with the pilot in the cockpit. Brittany followed slowly, her designer luggage suddenly feeling heavy and ridiculous. In the terminal, she watched as Captain Torres was met by two other people in military uniforms. They saluted crisply, then broke into easy conversation, walking together toward ground transportation. She noticed how they carried themselves, confident but not arrogant, alert but relaxed, professional but warm with each other. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. "How was the flight? Did you get good pictures for Instagram?" Brittany looked at her phone, then at the retreating figure of Captain Torres. She thought about the post she'd planned to make, a selfie in first class with a caption about living the dream. She thought about her 200,000 followers who saw her as an aspiration, a goal, proof that beauty and money equaled success. She opened her Instagram app and started typing, her thumbs moving slowly, deliberately. "I made a huge mistake today. I was rude to someone on my flight because I judged him by his appearance. I assumed he didn't belong in first class because he wasn't dressed in designer clothes or broadcasting his importance. Then I found out he's an Air Force captain who just returned from combat deployment. But here's the thing. I should have been respectful regardless of who he was. Service members are heroes, but so are teachers, healthcare workers, and everyone else who gives more than they take. I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better. Sorry isn't enough, but it's a start. To Captain Torres, thank you for your service and your grace. You taught me more in a few hours than I've learned in years." She posted it without filters, without careful curation, without thinking about engagement metrics. It felt strangely liberating. Within minutes, comments started flooding in. Some were supportive. Many were shocked. Her followers weren't used to seeing vulnerability or admission of fault from her. A few were critical, calling her out for her usual content. She read them all, not deleting even the harsh ones. Her father called. She let it go to voicemail. Instead, she Googled Volunteer Opportunities Colorado Springs and started scrolling through the results. She saw listings for veterans organizations, homeless shelters, food banks, literacy programs. She wasn't naive enough to think one incident would completely transform her. She knew the values her father had instilled ran deep, that the lifestyle she'd embraced for 17 years wouldn't disappear overnight. But she also knew that Captain Torres had shown her a different way of being, one where worth wasn't measured in designer labels or follower counts, where respect was given freely rather than earned through displays of wealth, where real strength was quiet and service was noble. At her hotel that night, instead of posting photos of the expensive room and mountain views, Brittany found herself researching the Air Force Academy. She read about the rigorous training, the commitment to service, the code of honor. She learned about what it took to become a pilot, the years of training, the dedication required. She thought about Captain Torres, probably at Peterson Space Force Base right now, preparing for his next deployment. She thought about the combat missions he'd flown, the lives he'd saved, the sacrifices he'd made. And she thought about his simple blue jacket, his aviation history book, his deliberate choice not to announce his importance. Real strength is quiet. Real achievement speaks through actions, not words. The modeling shoot the next day felt hollow. The photographer kept praising her, telling her she was perfect, stunning, a natural. But all she could think about was that she was being celebrated for something she hadn't earned, genetic lottery, and her parents' money for procedures and treatments. When the photographer asked what she wanted to project in the photos, Brittany surprised herself by saying, "I don't know. What have I done that's worth projecting?" The photographer laughed, thinking she was joking. But Brittany wasn't joking. 3 months later, Brittany had cut her posting frequency in half and changed her content significantly. She still shared fashion and beauty content. It was what her audience knew her for. But now she interspersed it with posts about volunteering at a veterans center, about the stories she was learning, about service and sacrifice, and what real strength looked like. She lost followers. The fashion brands that used to send her free products stopped reaching out. Her engagement rates dropped. Her father was furious, telling her she was destroying her brand. But something else happened too. She gained followers who engaged more meaningfully. She started receiving messages from service members and veterans thanking her for her support. She connected with other influencers who were trying to use their platforms for something beyond consumption and display. And one day, she received a direct message that made her cry. It was from Captain Torres. "Brittany, I saw your posts. I'm impressed by the work you're doing and the growth you've shown. It takes courage to change, especially publicly. Keep it up. What you're doing matters more than you know. Respect isn't given based on rank, remember? It's given to everyone. But it can be earned by choosing to serve others. You're making that choice. That's real success." MT. She read the message a dozen times, each word feeling like validation she hadn't known she needed. Not validation from likes or follower counts, but validation that she was on the right path, that change was possible, that she could become someone who added value instead of just displaying it. The next week, she took down her most popular post, a photo of her in front of a private jet with the caption, "Living my best life." She replaced it with a photo of herself at the Veterans Center, helping organize a holiday meal for retired service members. The caption read, "This is my best life. Not because of where I am or what I'm wearing, but because of who I'm serving. Thank you to a certain Air Force captain for teaching me that lesson. I'm still learning, still growing, still making mistakes, but I'm trying to be better, and that's all anyone can do." Her father threatened to cut her off financially. She told him she'd get a job. She was terrified, but also strangely excited. For the first time in her life, she was choosing her own path, defining her own values, building her own version of success. She didn't know where that path would lead. Maybe she'd go to college and study something meaningful. Maybe she'd find a way to use her platform for genuine good. Maybe she'd discover a talent or passion she'd never explored because she'd been too focused on maintaining an image. But she knew one thing for certain. She would never again judge someone by their jacket or assume that quiet dignity was weakness. She would never again confuse expensive things with actual worth or mistake service for failure. Because on a flight to Colorado Springs, a young Air Force captain had taught her the most important lesson of her life, not through lectures or anger, but through simple, quiet dignity in the face of disrespect. He had shown her that real strength doesn't need to announce itself, that true achievement speaks through actions, and that service, in any form, is the highest calling of all. And that lesson was worth more than all her designer clothes, all her Instagram followers, and all her father's money combined. It was a lesson that would shape not just her next post, but the rest of her life.